Hi, parents. Welcome to our fifth grade DLA school curriculum night. I want to thank you in advance for taking the time to watch this as it will go over and give you a nice overview of what to expect this year for your child's for school and what our curriculum looks like if now that we're in remote learning. So I have been teaching fifth grade now for 9 years, and all 9 of the years actually have been in our school district. I started off at Riley, where I taught fifth grade for 5 years, and then I moved over here to Longfellow, where I've been teaching fifth grade now for this will be the fourth year. And even though I'm the DLA teacher for fifth grade for your child, my classroom still is at Longfellow. So that's where I go to work every single day. Um, I have to say, fifth grade is my favorite grade to teach, although it is all I know. I always feel like it is a bittersweet year because we're not together for more than just a year before I pass them on to middle school. So it's hard because you get to know the kids so well, and like other grade levels, get to see their kids in the school throughout the year. Fifth grade teachers don't necessarily get to have that same luxury because we pass them on to middle school. So having said that, I also like being able to really shape at them and mold them and prepare them for middle school when they leave at the end of the year. Um, I grew up in Mundelein, and I went to Mundelein High School. For college, I went to a small private liberal arts school in Illinois called Monmouth College, where I studied elementary education and psychology. I also swam and played water polo there. And then a little bit later, about 2 years later, I decided to go get my master's from Concordia in Chicago here, and have continued to take more classes along the way past that to just help me learn as much as I can. So learning is really important to me, and just growing your mind and kind of soaking everything up. And so I try to pass it on to the kids as well. The best way to reach me for any reason is through email. If you don't have my email and you haven't been getting any notifications from me, please just shoot me an email so that I check to make sure that I have the correct address on file. And then you're also going to want to put down Sarah Fouch's email, and she is going to be taking over my maternity leave pretty soon here. Actually, I'm not sure when, but it'll be relatively in the next couple of weeks. And she already has all of your contact information. So just write that down in case. And the nice thing too that I will say is she's already been in our classroom multiple times, getting to know the kids, seeing how I run things. So this will not be new to her when she does take over my leave. I've also put on my signature, and maybe some of you have seen it, I have a Google Voice number, so that directly goes to my cell phone. It's not my cell phone number, it's the school's number. But if you ever have any questions, you can also call me on that number. But the best way to reach me is going to be email. And I will say, I think because everyone knows that we're on our computer all day, the understanding might be that we check our email constantly, but it isn't necessarily where I'm toggling between my email and the Google Meet 24/7. So if you don't hear back from me by lunchtime, it might be because I just haven't checked it yet. But by the end of the day, I've usually read through everything. If there's an issue with technology, I'll probably be popping back into the email to see if anyone's trying to get a hold of me. But generally speaking, I'm not always checking that 24/7. So please, if it's anything urgent that you need to get a hold of me, you can either call my Google Voice number or call the school, and they can kind of page me. Otherwise, email is, by the end of the day, I do try to get back to everybody. In terms of emails, I do generally send weekly announcements or emails with important information that you would need. If there is anything that I want you to know, that's my main way of contacting you. So again, if you don't have the correct email address, please just shoot me an email. I appreciate that. Okay, so this is my wonderful family that is growing by one in a couple of weeks here. This is my husband, Corey. During this whole quarantine, he has been, his job has technically changed him to just being in the house pretty much all the time and working from home. So it's been nice getting to know that he's home here watching our dog while I'm at work. He's in sales, so he travels a lot for work. Our dog Charlie in the middle, who's going to be 3 in November, and then a picture of me on our first day of school with our first baby that we are expecting at the end of September. So there's been a lot of planning going on with school to make sure that everything is good for when I leave, and I can assure you your kids are going to be in great hands when I am on my maternity leave. This is just a little setup of what my desk looks like currently. I'm sure you've seen all over social media or even your house, just dual screens. So in my room, I've got 2 screens, one to kind of see the kids, and then the other one to manage all the different tabs that we're working on throughout the day. But it has been really, really helpful for this whole e-learning platform. And I know some students have also tried it at home too. Just wanted to remind you that if your child does have a second screen or is using a bigger screen, just to make sure that their main hub for the internet is coming from the school computer, because if it's not, I can't access their computer through our app called GoGuardian, which allows me to see what they're working on when I'm giving them a task. So again, if they have a second monitor, that's awesome. Just make sure that they are primarily their internet where they're doing their work on the school Chromebook so that I can see what they're doing. One of our ways of just checking in with the kids and making sure that they're not, on YouTube or playing games when they're supposed to be doing work. All right, so let's take a look at learning targets. This is basically just lets you know that all teachers across the district, specifically all teachers in 5th grade, are following the same curriculum. So if there were to be a movement of kids coming back into the classroom, then they would be on the same page with that teacher. So there's weekly learning targets for language arts, math, science, and social studies. So essentially, there is a pacing guide for all subjects so that we are all on the same page, so that when kids do come back to in-person, or if your child does go back to in-person, they aren't behind. Okay. Moving on to learner qualities and social emotional learning. Learner qualities are a really big part of a child, and I really emphasize them in 5th grade because, while it is important that your child works hard and studies and wants to do well to get A's, B's, or C's, learner qualities are also just as important. So these are really what make them a responsible citizen and prepares them for future as well. You can be a straight A student and you can be a terrible collaborative worker. So it's really important that we balance both of them. And so we focus on all 4 of them in 5th grade, especially the self-directed learner piece really coming into play with remote learning. But self-directed learner, respectful citizen, quality producer, and collaborative worker. And what does that specifically look like when we're in remote learning? The biggest one, like I said earlier, is self-directed learner. Your child in this class, and all students right now, have to really be self-directed when they're on the computer. And for some, it might be harder than others, but in the classroom, when the teacher's right there, we're able to kind of redirect, remind them to get back on task. When they're at home, there are other distractions at home. And so it's really important that, the kids stay focused and that they're in a place for learning at their home, free of, other distractions, and then also just making sure that they are keeping up with their schoolwork and following the directions in class on the computer, so that they don't miss anything. So there's a lot that they have control over. And while I would say that I can see everything that they're doing at every moment, I can't. So it's really important that that the kids remember that a lot of this also falls on them. I can only do so much to enforce that, and then the rest has to come from your child. Respecting everybody on the computer, what that looks like, quality producer in terms of what kind of work are the kids turning in. It is what we found is on the computer, it tends to be a little easier for kids to put less effort in. And so, really emphasizing that their work needs to look like a fifth grader's work. And my expectations won't change on what that should look like, even if we're on the computer. So, detailed sentences, capital letters, proper spelling, checking and reading the directions over thoroughly, and just making sure that they're putting forth their best effort, even though they're not right in front of me. And then collaborative worker, how well do they work together with their peers? Even though we are on the computer, we do and are currently actually working on a group project. So the kids do still get that exposure, even though we're on the computer. And how can they be an active participant in group projects? And I think the kids have found it is a little bit harder to let their voice be heard when they're on the computer working with a group of students, because it's very easy to kind of just sit back and be quiet, but the point is that they need to be speaking up and sharing their ideas as much as I would want them to be doing that in person too. So I think some students are still warming up to that, where others are really finding their place and doing a really great job learning how to navigate what it looks like to be a collaborative worker electronically. In addition, we also focus on SEL, and we are all, building positive learning communities with the students through various activities. And so, one thing that we're doing right now, a lot of, is breakout rooms, which is where the students get together in small groups and do a fun activity. Currently, right now, they're working on a social studies project together, but SEL is woven in throughout the day, where we also do have time to work on these collaborative, fun activities. There also is time set in the beginning of the day for us to bond and form more of a family community, where we can feel like we can trust one another, where we feel that we can open up, and where that family dynamic really comes into play. So both of these are very important, especially on the computer, because it is another barrier that we have to kind of break down since we're not in person. So just giving the kids many opportunities to get to know one another. And, the cool thing about our situation is that we've got students from 5 different schools. So the kids are really enjoying getting to learn about students that don't necessarily go to their home school, and getting to chat with them. So I found that to be pretty cool as well. And I think the kids do too. Okay. So here are just a couple important resources that we will, consistently use in the classroom. The first being the Google Classroom. And this is where I hub and house everything that we will be doing in class. So I've essentially said to the kids, this should always be up on your computer, because this is your direct access to everything you're going to need throughout the day, basically. Um, this little Meet link right here is actually what you will use to join me for the question and answer session if you choose to come. And this is also where the students join every morning at 9 o'clock for our live Google Meet. And the classwork section is where the students find all of their work for the day. And I have essentially organized it by week. So when the kids scroll through the Google Classroom classwork section, they will see like week of September 7th, week of September 14th. And if they were absent, that's a quick and easy way for them to access what we were doing that day in the classroom with any other links that they would need. And or in addition, under the classwork section is where anything the kids are going to need will be posted. So if they forgot their password for, let's say, Connect Ed Math, the password is up there for them. If they forgot our sign in for Epic, it's up there. If they want to access our Math Arcade game in Math One Day, it's up there. So if your child hasn't shown you that, ask them to show you how to navigate that section, because it would be good practice for them too. And then also, like I had mentioned in the classwork section, every day I post a Google slide for the students so that they know what they need to do for the day. And it's basically, I tell them it is their go-to for what we're going to be doing in class, just in case they drop the call, or if they had to take a break for a quick moment. they'll know what we're doing based on that Google slide. And so all of that will be posted every day under the classwork section. So like I said, if your child misses school, they can look at the math lesson. It's posted on that Google slide. Everything for the day is posted on that Google slide. Well, mostly everything for the day. Some things I'll send out to them while we're live, but for the most part, everything that they're going to need is on that Google slide, which is posted under the classwork. Another site that we use a lot is Seesaw, and that is just a way for all three of us to collaborate together and share our knowledge. So me, you, and the child. Your student will post something for me and you to see. I will check it, I will approve it, and I might even comment on it, and then you can see it as well. So it's a great way for you to see what's going on in the classroom, to see what your child's working on. And then I always encourage you to like it and leave a comment for your child so that they know that you saw their work. Okay, so our daily schedule looks like this. Most of the time it's pretty close to this. Sometimes it changes. With map testing, it was changing a little bit, but for the most part, this is what our schedule looks like every day. So we got morning work, SEL, a morning meeting. So it could be any of those three. Just a great way to check in before we start off getting into the academic part of the day. Math, then we got a brain break in there as we find that the kids are on the computer a lot. It's really important for them to get up and move around. So sometimes the break isn't 20 minutes, but sometimes it's 10, but just allowing for them to get up and move around. And then we've got language arts before and after lunch. The after lunch portion is mainly silent reading for them. In addition to this podcast that the kids love, it's called the 6-Minute Podcast, and it's just a auditory story, great for the kids to listen to reading and having to visualize and picture what's going on. And they beg for it when I forget to play it. So it's a really great way to bring them back from lunch and recess, to kind of bring them back into the classroom before they start reading silently. And then social studies and or science, we alternate between those. So right now we're doing social studies because we don't have our mystery science kits yet, which will be coming pretty soon here actually. And then specials to end the day. Every day your child will have specials from 2:30 to 3:30. This whole schedule sheet is actually also in the Google Classroom. So in case they forget where they're going, they can look here. But again, like I had mentioned earlier, every day that I post a Google slide with the schedule, I also post the specials with the links on there. So they should never really have a problem getting to their special, because I also give them the link every single day. It is important too that they attend specials, seeing though it is at the end of the day. At that point, they transition from my class to another class, and then at 3, it's their responsibility to go to their second special. So again, that whole self-directed learner piece also falls on them here too, because I'm not walking them to specials. They have to remember to go to their second special. Okay, so the different types of instruction for our remote learning, there are 2 different umbrellas. We've got synchronous and asynchronous. A lot of the springtime was asynchronous instruction, and a lot of what we are doing now is a combination of both. So what that means is, for synchronous instruction, that's basically happening all day, every day, but the combination between that and asynchronous varies. So synchronous basically means that I'm delivering the lesson live to your child face to face through the Google Meet, okay, using a whole group instruction approach. So I actually started teaching math this way in class and found it to be actually quite difficult with kids getting dropped out of the call, because kids would be coming in and they'd be kind of like lost because they missed something. And so I thought, there's got to be a better way. So instead of delivering our math lessons now live, the launch is what I kind of like to say, We do more of a small group instruction that's live. And so I'll talk more about the asynchronous piece in just a minute, but in math, what I really like about the synchronous piece is that I'm giving them the lesson at their need in a small group. So just like I would in class if we were in person, I would do stations. And so I'm mimicking that and modeling that through the computer by teaching your child live in a small group with like 5 to 6 kids. The synchronous is going to be usually the launch of the lesson where the child is going to receive the live part of the lesson, with the exception of math because we pre-record it. And then the asynchronous piece is when the child goes and works either on their own independently or with a group, or like in a breakout group, or maybe they're working independently, but they're staying on the Google Meet with me in case they have a question. So the asynchronous piece is more where the child is working independently, just like they would in a classroom, where the teacher would deliver the lesson and then the child would go work independently or with a partner on whatever the task is that the teacher wants them to do. Asynchronous can also be pre-recorded using Screencastify, which is what I'm using right now. We video, Google Slides, and Pear Deck. Pear Deck's like an interactive Google slide where kids answer as you go through a lesson. So asynchronous can be pre-recorded too. And the nice thing about both of these is that it's a nice balance between. So it's not an all or nothing approach. It's a nice blend between the two, using them in their best form. Asynchronous can also be pre-assigned collaborative group work, and that's also monitored by me. So we're currently in social studies groups right now. The students are researching Pioneer Life, one wave of Pioneer, and they are working together to create a presentation. And so on my computer, I actually have 8 different tabs open with all the students in them in their group, so I can see what they're all working on and I can talk to them and give them feedback. But that's still asynchronous because they're in a small group working and the instruction is not being delivered from me. They're now working together. So again, it's just a blend of both. So our language arts curriculum is combination of several things. So we've got a new curriculum last year. If any of you are familiar with the Fontes and Pinnell series, a great curriculum resource that we're using. There's 2 components to it. So interactive read alouds we do frequently every week, and they include fiction and nonfiction texts. And so we have rich discussions on these read alouds several times a week, with then follow-up discussion questions, follow-up written responses, follow-up questions as well. We also will be using novels throughout the year that have rich content and historical connection. And I hope that your child has come home, at home, has told you about the book that we're reading called Refugee. Great book. The kids are so excited to be listening to it. We listened to it on Epic, and they all have a copy of it that I put in their materials, and just a really, really rich text for us to dive into, analyze, annotate, and discuss in addition to these other read alouds. We also will be taking your child through the writing process with 3 different forms of writing: the narrative, informative, and opinion. We've already started the narrative unit, where students are currently coming up and generating lists of ideas to write a personal narrative about themselves. And we've got a class full of students who do love to write, so I'm really excited to take them to some great places with their writing. In math, we use a program called Everyday Math, and kids all have math journals at home too that we are using, because the kids can't be literally on the computer all day, so it's nice for them to be writing on a journal instead of typing things. So it's a nice break, I think. But in addition to that, we'll be learning about geometry, a little algebra, fractions, and basic operations. Kind of like what I was mentioning earlier, our math lessons are recorded ahead of time to launch the lesson. So they can range anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. And essentially, the kids will watch it first, and then they'll be instructed to either go to their station or come back live so that I can give them the next direction. And what we have found, now that we're in like the fourth week of school, we've kind of established a pretty good routine. We found that what works best is the students are watching that pre-recorded lesson all at the same time. And then students are, they go to a station. And if they're not in the teacher station working with me, then they are working on like a must do, may do list. And so that must do is what they have to be doing during math before they move on to their may do's. And so that's what they work on when they're not working with me in a small group, where I can focus on and differentiate their needs in a smaller setting. So like I mentioned, class will come back together again to model concepts. I am using guided math to meet the individual needs, and extension opportunities will be available. I've already sent out a math challenge for students. They know every 2 weeks they can get a new one, and they are encouraged. They are highly encouraged to be doing that, and everybody can do it. It just gets harder as the students go through that green packet. So if they finish their may do's, they can move on to if they finish their must do's, their may do is one of the activities they can do in their may do is that weekly challenge. It's a green piece of paper. It's got 3 pages attached, or 2 pages, but it's 4 pages included. And they can be working on that too. So there are many different opportunities for them to be working with all different various forms of math. For science, we use the program Mystery Science, and 4th and 5th grade actually follow the same scope and sequence right now. So we're going to be doing some Birth of Rocks, Watery Planet, physical science, energizing everything, life, web of life, and then discovery science. They get twice a week, which is woven into our weekly schedule as a special this year, which is kind of nice. And as I had mentioned, there is a 2-year cycle of units. So 4th and 5th grade are on the same cycle. They were on the same cycle last year, and they're on the same cycle this year. So if you have a 4th and 5th grader, you would be seeing them doing the same units. The Mystery Science program has a lot of hands-on opportunities, and students will actually be getting their own Mystery Science kit coming up in the next few weeks. For social studies, the concepts that we really dive into is perspective and conflict, and it's taught through the westward expansion, the Civil War, and the 20th century. So as I had mentioned earlier, we are currently learning about the westward expansion, and students are wrapping up a project right now on Pioneer Life, where they worked in a small group of 3 or 4 students, and will be giving a presentation to our class on what they have found. So even though we are in remote learning, there are still going to be ongoing projects that are going to be asynchronous, meaning the kids will be working on these on their own independently. The Tower of Books is one of them. Just a great way to encourage your child to read more at home and read more of a variety of genres. And so I launched this probably 2 weeks ago. But basically, there is a list of 20 different types of books that they should be reading throughout the year, all categorized into a different topic. So I think one of them on there is like 3 of your choice picture books. Another one might be 2 graphic novels, a historical fiction text. And so anytime they finish one of these books in their tower, they have to either write a book recommendation, a book review, or a summary of it, and they have to get it approved by me. Once it's approved by me, they get to actually color in a book spine on their tower. They'll make this huge tower of all the different spines of the books that they've read. And the goal is by the end of the year that they should have completed all 20 of them. So the maximum amount of books that they can read is 20 books. And I've had several kids every year always reach the 20 and want the second challenge. And there is a second additional piece to the Tower of Books challenge that I can give students who reach the 20 before the end of the year. But sometimes students will also say, what if we don't finish it? Are we going to be punished? I don't punish them for not finishing the Tower of Books by the end of the year. But what I do tell them is, hey, you know what? If you read 12 books out of 20 by the end of the year, that's 12 more books maybe that you read that you might not have read if you didn't try this challenge. So they are encouraged to be reading an assortment of books. They should be reading 20 minutes every night. But all that can also go towards the Tower of Books. The current events will be starting later this month. Basically, students will take a topic that they're interested in, and they will find 2 different articles on that topic to read, summarize, and then form an opinion on. They will then present that to our class. And in 5th grade, one of their power standards and what kids have to be able to do is to be able to form an opinion using several sources. And so one of the ways which we hit that standard is by having the kids do current events. And so even though we are on the computer, we are still doing that. Current events will rotate with book talks. I'd say every other month. It also kind of depends on how long it takes the students to be doing this now remotely. Even though it is a at-home type of project, there might be some days in class where I say that they could work on their current events, just because they are on the computer so much, that I might weave that in. But it is expected that they have that completed, and that they're working on that at home as well. I can't guarantee how much time that they'll get in class. In a typical school year, when we're not on the computer, this would be something that they would do solely and independently at home. But this year, I'm trying to find ways to incorporate extra time for them in the classroom too. In addition, book talks, basically, the students will read a book and they will give a book talk, and then they will also have a project assigned to it, and they get to choose what that will look like out of 9 different options and present it to our class. So along with these ongoing projects, I'm sure many of you have been wondering about homework and how that looks with e-learning. You know, I've taken classes on homework. It is a very controversial topic. There's many people that say, yes, homework should exist, and there's many people that say, no, it shouldn't exist. I do believe in homework. I do think it prepares kids for middle school. It teaches them responsibility. And while I do typically assign it throughout the school year in a typical school year, because we're on the computer all day, we don't want to create fatigue and stress with additional work expectations after 3:30. So our building decided that we are not giving homework. Any type of work is being done on the computer. We'll reassess as the year goes on, but right now, what your child should be doing every night is daily reading. Reading for 20 minutes at home, checking off some books off their Tower of Books. When we start our current events, they can be working on current events. They can be typing at home to practice. They also can be using our math websites that we use in class, or the reading websites that we use to practice. But there isn't necessarily going to be, here's a home link for you to complete at home. Home links in math, which you're probably used to getting as homework, which I've always assigned in the past, those will be woven in and embedded throughout math. So I might use them as a warm-up one day. I might use them in a small group one day. I might use them as a quiz one day. It just depends. So it's not that we're not going to use them. It's just I'm not going to assign them for homework. I'm going to build them in throughout the day or throughout that unit. Just because they're not getting homework doesn't mean that they're not working hard in the classroom. There's a lot that they're doing, especially with math being one of those subjects that I would always assign homework for. There are a multitude of activities that the kids are doing every day for math where they're getting that practice. But again, if they want extra practice, they can be using those websites that we use often in class, and they can do that after school too. The other thing that I wanted to mention too about homework that I just thought of, every day there's tasks for the kids to complete. And if for some reason your child isn't completing those tasks in the classroom, that would be something that I'd want them to finish at home and turn in so that I can check it over. So that could turn into like a homework piece if they didn't finish it because they weren't being self-directed in the class, or they weren't, they weren't on time, or they missed something. That's something that then is like case by case. Classroom management. So positive behavior is expected and reinforced even during this remote learning. And in order to help the kids, in order to, motivate them, and in order to build this class community that is so important, we are doing a raffle system, ticket system, basically, and just a way to kind of pump up the class for doing the right thing. I believe in positive reinforcement. And so anytime I can recognize that, I will. The rewards are student driven. We have created a list of different rewards that our class would be interested in. And we also have come up with what constitutes or what deserves a ticket. And so right now, I'm giving a lot of tickets out for students who are participating consistently, because that is something that's difficult when you're in virtual learning, because as I mentioned, it can be easy to just sit there and be quiet. But the kids know, because I've said it to them a jillion times over and over again, the way that you engage yourself in our lessons is going to be participating. And if you just sit there and you stay quiet, you're not going to be as engaged as a child who's constantly raising their hands. So I say, if I have to tell you to put your hand down, you're getting a ticket, because that means that you're participating a lot. Students might also get tickets for being one of the first 5 kids to join our Google Meet at 1 o'clock. They can be given for getting all problems correct on something, some assignment in the classroom. But essentially, the tickets are there to reinforce positive behavior. I consistently strive and want to build our community, because it is hard to build these relationships on the computer, and that is still my ultimate goal, is to create a family on the computer where we can trust one another, where we can be open and share stories about our personal lives with each other. And with that, then learning can occur because you trust one another. We do have an organization and routines for students. Every day we kind of follow the same schedule. And, also, while we're doing a lot of work on the computer, it is important that I get to know your child through the computer, not just through assignments. And so something else that I do is virtual lunches, where kids can sign up to have lunch with me and some friends. And it's a great way for me to get to know your child on a closer level, free of distractions of schoolwork. We spend about a half an hour together during lunch. They can invite 2 to 3 friends, maybe friends from other schools as the year, progresses. But I'm finding that they're kind of sticking with students that they know right now, and hopefully they'll branch out to be inviting students that are from other schools as well. Gmail and Google Classroom expectations. So as I had mentioned earlier, there is a schedule that's posted in Google Classroom under classwork. It's organized by week so that you can always find it. All the links needed are going to be posted in the Google slideshow, and I will generally have that posted by 8:50 so that the kids can look at that ahead of time and know what they are going to be expected to do for the day. Also, as I had mentioned earlier, I do remind the kids that the Google slideshow, the daily Google slideshow, should always be a tab open on their computer so it's quick and easy to access, so that it doesn't stall or delay our lesson in class. Because if it's not open, then it's one more step for them to get to where they need to go later. So like I said, they should refer to the schedule throughout the day, especially if they have missed an activity. Sometimes kids, they have to go to the bathroom during an activity, and that's fine. I always tell them, as long as it's not during the lesson, they can go. But if they come back and they don't know where they're supposed to be, they can just look at that Google slide, and it will help them navigate where it is that they're supposed to be. The school day begins at 9 o'clock. So the first couple of weeks, I was a little lenient because we were all still kind of trying to get a feel for the technology piece of all this. But your child really should be on the Google Meet. I tell them by like 9:02, 9:05, being on time, just like they would be in the classroom. Sometimes I know things come up, especially being at home doing all of this, but if you can reinforce that with your child and remind them, we're not logging in at 9:30 because at that point we've already missed a good chunk of the morning. So it's beneficial that they get up a little beforehand, look at the schedule ahead of time so that they know what's expected for the day and that they meet with us at 9 o'clock. I do also tell the kids to check their email in the morning and in the afternoon, just in case there's ever an announcement that I have to give them. That's probably a rare occurrence, but in case they didn't turn in an assignment, I will email them and let them know. I will also carbon copy you on that email so that you're both aware that I'm missing something from your child that has to get finished. Other online platforms that we use includes Pear Deck, Seesaw, Padlet, Flipgrid, ClassKit, Kami, Screencast, Find More. There is a lot of technology out there, and I believe in starting with a few and doing them well before moving on to some new ones. And so most of these, with the exception of Kami, the kids have already used, and moving forward will continue to use as well. Okay, so to kind of piggyback off of what I was saying on the previous slide, each day at 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock attendance is taken during our Google Meet. So the kids do know that they need to be on time. Returning back on time after being asynchronous is also expected. So a couple of things there. Attendance is taken pretty soon after 9 and 1. So if your child's not on the computer by that time, I tend to give them, I don't tell them this, but I tend to give like an extra 10 minutes to pad that before I turn in the attendance. But it's really hard to be going back and forth between the attendance and the Google Meet to update it. So just by coming by 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock makes my job a little easier. And then also they're coming back on time, which is what's expected. Same thing goes for if they're doing an asynchronous task. So for example, in math, I might say, okay, once you're done with your stations, you're moving on to your must do, may do. And then I want everybody to come back to the main Google Meet at 10:30 for us to go over the answers and for us to summarize what we did today. At that point, the kids need to come back at 10:30 as well. They need to remember, they could write it down, they could set an alarm, all of those things we've talked about in class as tips and strategies to help stay on top of things. But during those live Google Meets, I will also verbally say, you need to be back at this time. And that's expected that your child comes back. It's not a time to go walk the dog. It's not a time to go have a snack and return in 20 minutes. That is meant for them to come back so that they can be with us for the next activity. So we've gone over these expectations with the kids several times. They need to be on time. They need to be working in a quiet place. I've had to tell students that they need to, not lay on the ground on their pillow with their stuffed animals, as much as that might be comfortable. They really should be working on some sort of a table or a desk, on a chair, because that's going to be the best environment for them to work and focus without distractions. Especially with siblings, I know it's probably hard being on e-learning with kids at home too, but just really trying to find a quiet place for them to work so that they can put forth their best effort. You need to be prepared, make sure their computer's charged, they have all their materials, especially if your child's going to Cooper or a daycare, that they have their math journal with them every day, a dry erase board that I've given them, the marker, their computer, and anything else that they would need to be successful throughout the day. Kids should also have their cameras on. This is something that I have to still remind kids of. I tell them, would you want me with my face gone while I'm teaching? They're like, no, that would be weird. So it's also the same expectation that your child should be visible on the Google Meet, because I don't know what they're doing if they're not visible. They could be not by their computer for all I know. So it's just a way for me to make sure that they're engaged, and to make sure that they are in the lesson with us. They should always mute themselves. They've gotten really good at this. Participate. It is the best way for them to be engaged with our lessons, is to raise their hand and share their thoughts and ideas, and to ask questions when they have them. Chat responsibly. We just raise our hand in our classroom. I don't really have them using the little Google Meet icons on the side. I just think it's easier, like we would be in normal class, just to raise our hand. And then to be respectful and to stay on task when we are together on a live Google Meet. So those are the expectations when we are together on the computer. So just a quick little review. They should sit somewhere that's away from distractions. Their posture means that they're sitting up straight. I still have kids that are sitting on couches. I sometimes work on the couch, but for a whole day of e-learning, that would be pretty difficult to stay focused, I think, because I'd be tempted to just relax and lounge. And so the best place for them to work is just a table or a desk. I've seen some pretty cool setups in our classroom with where our kids are working, which is great. So just encourage that at home as well. Have their video and camera on and pointed at their face, not at the ceiling, not at the bottom of their Chromebook. I should be able to see them. Have their microphone muted unless they're talking. Be respectful by being on time and respecting others. And be responsible by being prepared with materials, participating, following directions, and paying attention. Like I said, that participation piece on a computer it can be a little bit harder, but the class is getting to be pretty good at raising their hand and participating in class, just keeping that consistent throughout the year as well. And then also too, as a reminder, when the meet is over, the kids will hang up the meet that they're on with me, and then we will come back together. So sometimes I will say, all right, you can get off of this meet, you can go work on X, Y, or Z. I need you back here at this time. And at that moment, the expectation is that they hang up the meet. So just as a reminder, this is such an unusual time. When we were in e-learning in the springtime, I didn't think it would last this long, but here we are still remote learning. And I know it's difficult for the kids, and I know it's difficult at home, just with schedules and work and teachers too. We're trying to do the best that we can. So we're all working to provide the best experience that we can under these circumstances. And I just really appreciate your support and helping your kids at home. In the beginning with the tech issues that we were having, those seem to be kind of ironed out now at this point. But just know that it is a learning curve for all of us, and I think we're finally in a great routine. The kids are doing a great job. They're real resilient, and I will say they're going to be so advanced in their tech skills when they get older because of this. And so I just wanted to tell you, thank you for helping. Thank you for supporting me and the kids at home, and doing your best to make this year as good as it can. So thank you. And just kind of one final thing as a reminder, my concern going into e-learning at the beginning of the year was, how do you build a class and community on the computer? It's very hard. We ended the year last year already knowing our students and having that relationship, but starting is also difficult with a class that you don't know. And our class has just done a great job of bonding and sharing stories and joking and just getting to know each and every one of your children on the computer has just been a true pleasure. And this class is just real sweet, funny, artistic, and just really kind. And I know that when we had some tech issues in the beginning, there were several students that just, openly would speak up and say, I think I know how to do that. Or Miss Williams, try this. Everybody has just worked well together and been flexible. And this class has been so patient. And that's really important as things might continue to change. So just wanting to tell you that I appreciate yours and your children's flexibility. If we just continue to be patient with one another, this year will continue to be a successful school year. So the last thing I wanted to mention is if you have a student that receives special ed support with Mrs. Lambert, this is the link to her curriculum night slideshow with information regarding special ed. I will also send out my Google slideshow to everybody so that you can actually access this link. Her Google Meet for special ed will be from 6 to 6:15 on Thursday, tomorrow, which is right before my Google Meet live question and answer time. So if you want to talk to her, that would be the time to pop into her room, so that you can ask her some questions. And the Google Meet link is just right below. So I just want to thank you again for your continued support and for allowing me to teach your child this year. If you have any questions, you can join me at the live question and answer from 6:15 to 6:30 tomorrow, which is Thursday. So if you still had some questions regarding when I went over, you can hop on. It is not required. I will be there if you do have any questions. You could also email me questions too if you don't have a moment to hop on there, and I can respond that way as well. So you can use your child's Google Meet link that's found in the Google Classroom. And I will also send that link to you as well, or you can email me your questions right below. And just as a reminder, it is a question and answer time, not like a conference time, even though I will probably speak to you about your child if you're on there anyway, just to give you a quick little update. But it's more geared towards any questions and answers that you have following this Google slideshow. So that's it. Thank you again. Hopefully this wasn't too long. And again, just continue to, if you have any questions throughout the year, just send them my way. And I look forward to partnering with you to make sure that your child gets the best year that they can. So thanks so much.